We were invited by a student of another member of the Clean Language community, Annemiek, in Holland. And she was working for GIZ. So that's an aid organization in Germany, a development organization in Germany. And she had a team that was fairly new, and she wanted me to come along with some clean language and systemic modeling to help her team create a model for how they're going to work together really well, and then how they as a team are going to support community-based organizations to work with refugees from Palestine and Syria, adults with learning disabilities and physical disabilities, and vulnerable families. So it was, can you come and do this in order that we can do this and they can help them? So that was the context that we were invited in.
And of course, Jordan has got a lot of refugees at the moment and a lot of work to do to look after so many people who've come in all sorts of traumatic circumstances.
Absolutely. And very interestingly, just in how it started, is that I had a Syrian refugee living with us, staying with us temporarily, and he was helping this person to translate clean questions into Arabic. And so it was all quite nicely convoluted, that then she said, actually, would you like to come over and work with my team? So it's just a lovely connection.
And then what happened?
So we went over, and it was interesting because, GIZ as a development organization, it's already got this remit that rather than we ignore what's going on, or we tell you what you should do, or we consult about what you should do, or we collaborate with you, we need to move from here towards we will collaborate with you on what needs to happen, or we'll also treat you as the expert on what you need, and we'll take direction, we'll defer to your needs, and we're here to support you to do what you want to do, not what we think you should do. So they've already got this remit as a body. And so the clean language and systemic modeling really suited that, which is that we're going to give them a set of tools, not about how they should behave as a team, but about how they can include one another's voices, ask one another clean questions, move from problems to outcomes. So we would do that, and then they'd be able to pass those skills on. And we offered, since we were already out there, would they like us to demonstrate how to use it in the community so that they could use it internally, and we demonstrate how to use it externally. So it was very interesting. The group were obviously very bright. They could pick up the ideas quite quickly, and they were able to look at when it was incongruent, when the ways that they were behaving as a team were incongruent with the values of the organization. And that was really important, because I think that just because theoretically you're supposed to do something, it doesn't mean that it's easy to decolonize your mind. It's not easy to give up the expert, let me be helpful to you.
And it's a pattern that we've seen in all the stuff that we've done with different development organizations. The Norwegian Refugee Council, for example, they're brilliant people. They really get nothing about us without us, that you work with the communities, whatever. But they still fall into the trap, and they hear themselves doing it and they go, oh, that's me being expert again.
It's work. It's massive work. The Lancet has just made this decision that if in mental health studies, all papers need to have lived experience voice in it, or they need to say a little disclaimer, by the way, we didn't actually talk to anyone who's got this condition. We just, as experts, decided it. And of course, lots of us and lots of them go into this work because they care and they want to help. And there is a fine line between, they use the Cartman model, between rescuing, you're not okay, so I'm going to, and what we do within Clean, which is right now, your system is okay as it is right now. And by asking it questions, we can create the conditions where it can work out its next step rather than us giving you the next step. That's the whole premise of Clean. So we had a really interesting and productive 3-4 days. The team started to build a metaphor for themselves. They worked out how they wanted to give one another feedback. And then we went out into the communities up to Zaka, which was, oh my goodness, was it hot. So for somebody like me who's already hot in a British winter, then yes, it was warm, and it was a very interesting group of people. We had a wonderful Arabic translator who really got into the that sort of the feel, the spirit of clean. And what we were doing is we were saying to them, if you're all individual community-based organizations, if they'd asked for a peer network, so said, if a peer network was just the way you'd like it to be, it would be like what? But just before that, we did a few exercises to demonstrate clean questions, and they just picked it up like that. I mean, there's one academic, she said, I completely get it. She was in charge of getting refugees into education. She said, the way we ask our children questions and the way that we are currently providing aid for them could make them dependent upon us so that they stay in our nest for a long time. Whereas what this is about, what these clean questions are about trusting from the start that they will be able to fly away on their own and embedding that in everything that we do. And you're like, yes, that could never have said that better myself. So they got it straight away. And I think it was a really nice example. So very quickly, they were giving their answers, they were developing it, they were building it. So all that Lucy Walker and I were there, all that we were doing was dropping in a clean question, reminding them. So every now and then one of them would say, for example, yeah, if our peer network was just the way it would be, it should be a volcano and it should destroy the upper crust of everything that's been, and it should leave us a nice, rich top layer of soil. And somebody in the other group said, no, that's just too violent. And I said, okay, I'm just going to pause you here. So what's happening here is the thing that's too violent is the model they've made up about their metaphor, not their metaphor, their model. So what I'm just going to encourage you to do, what's one or two questions you can ask before you decide whether you agree or disagree with that volcano? So they asked, so what kind of explode? Where does the top layer come from? They were like, oh, I see, you're trying to do this. So we're just using the clean questions to create space across the peer network so that they're inquiring into each other before they both agree and disagree. So they started to build their model, and it was lovely because it was close to what they wanted to do and not what GIZ thought they should do. There was natural intrinsic motivation. They were able to take leadership. None of it was owned by GIZ by the end of the day. It was all owned by the system, and the system was going to take it forward. So it was a lovely little example of how that tool can support that journey.
And so there are so many things I could ask here, but one of them is just to comment that creating a peer network, and there are people there from GIZ, and there's you and there's Lucy, and you know stuff about peer networks. So you're having, in order to do the process that you've just described, you're having to sit on your hands and hold your tongue. And the guys from GIZ are going to have to do the same, even though they've got lots of experience and lots of expertise. They have to back off for long enough to let the system do its. The participants find their voice through the questions.
Yes. And there was a little bit of jostling, but let's call it resettling, where every now and then when we looked around the room, we could see one of the members of GIZ was holding court. So in the group that they joined, they were 70% of the talking. And so and you've got to doing a couple of things. You've got to meet them where they are, as well as help instill this. So it's like, oh, I'll just distract them. I'll just go, oh, can I just borrow you for a minute to go over here and talk about something in order to leave this going again? And it's working out, how do you give the feedback? So, I'll tell you what I'm noticing as you go in that group. Just notice how much you're talking compared to how much they're talking. And do they want that feedback? Are they ready for it? But what they're doing is not congruent with what the group has asked for, nor what the organization wants to do. And I think all of us have to be, so if I'm not careful, I'm going to be telling them what they should do, and they're telling them what they should do. And it's very easy to get into a trap. So you've got to sit on your hands, and you've got to notice what's congruent and incongruent, and work out how to give feedback that's that this person's interested in and that they can do something about. So we were just able to say, oh, what might be a really useful position, rather than going in the group, because what we noticed was that they were listening to you. Just stay outside of the group and notice whose voices are being heard. And if somebody's not speaking, maybe ask them a question. So it's like, we'll just give them a little nudge in this direction, but not a correction, which might shame them, when actually, for 10 years, they've been an excellent expert. And now we're suddenly asking them to give up their expertise.
And to be a facilitator rather than an expert. An expert facilitator being a very different skill.
Yes.
And now, so I'm also very curious about the context of this conversation with the group. So I'm guessing the participants are mostly Arabic speakers.
All Arabic speakers, yeah.
All Arabic speakers. You don't speak Arabic. Lucy doesn't speak Arabic. GIZ people will be a mixture of Arabic speakers.
They're all Arabic speakers.
They're all Arabic speakers.
Except for the team leader.
Yeah. So it was happening in Arabic.
Yes. Well, now that's really interesting, Julie, because I absolutely don't. I'm used to speaking, working in Japan and before the war in Russia. So I'm used to watching groups, but you can tell, because a good systemic modeling, a good clean led group, they don't, that thing that happened across the room where somebody says something and somebody shuts it down, you can see that.
Mm.
You can see the difference between somebody speaking and somebody cutting them off, and somebody speaking and somebody inquiring into it. It has a rhythm to it.
Yeah. That's been my experience as well. Context different, of course, because I'm more often doing something which is formally training. But again, you send them off into small groups to do an activity, and you can tell whether they're doing the activity or just talking to each other.
You don't have to hear it. There's a quality of attention that the clean questions, and we only taught them 4 clean questions.
Mm-hmm.
That there's a quality of attention that the clean questions bring that is completely different to just having a chat or an argument or jostling.
You hear it from the volume, from the tone of voice, and you can see it in the body language if you're in the room, as this presumably was, rather than online. And you know whether they're doing the thing or not. My next curiosity is what happens next. Those people who participate in that group, are they taking those questions out in Arabic to the people they work with, do you think? Or is that a step too?
Some of them did, or I know because they've posted how they've translated them. So I think that's what's required that we didn't have ready is some, what the university would call some learning resources we could do with. And I think there's just more work to be done. I'm not confident that the way that we're translating it yet is fit for purpose. So I think the next job is to work with the GIZ group of Arabic speakers, because they're using it internally and taking it to their friends, family, children, parents. So they're using it. We've got to check in August to go, okay, what are the translations, and can we create some Arabic, starter packs that could be used with teenagers? So the CBOs were mental health workers, teachers, social workers, nurses, the HIV specialists. So they were all working for the health of the community, whether it's mental health or physical health and social health. So making sure that they could access education, that they could access their documents. It was a really inspirational group. But if we want them to be able to take them out easily, I'd say that what we managed to get this group to get really well in a day was the principle. Feel the principle, and 4 questions will give you the principles. You don't need loads more. But if we want them to be able to take it out well, I think what we need are some little cards, some maybe 3, learning at your best, learning at your worst, making decisions, just little things that we could say, here's a starter for 10, now make your own.
And I'm curious about the Arabic translation, because there are bunches of people in different pockets around the Arabic world who will have various versions going on. I think I've got half a dozen names in my mind at the moment of people who are probably using Clean Question in Arabic at some level.
So I think I don't have the capacity to lead it, but I know certainly the translator that we worked with was absolutely inspired by what he was noticing. And he works in this field. He said he'd never seen a workshop quite like this. He'd never seen a workshop that was so quickly was being led by the group and not that shape, but this shape. I think, he got involved with Mohammed Asghar, who used to live with me. He was getting involved because he's just been learning clean language interviewing. If you had some people, if we could find somebody who would lead that and then experiment for a little bit and then go, okay, as far as we are at the minute, this is what we think. And I do think it takes time. My book was translated into Russian. And it wasn't until I taught a bunch of Russian students enough clean that they went, this is a terrible translation. This is not what you mean at all. And it takes time. It takes time. It takes time for us as native English speakers to go, oh, that's what this question's for. So yeah, I do think it's a project, but it's not going to be my project.
So we're throwing the question out there. If there's somebody out there, a native Arabic speaker who would like to lead on this, shout.
Yes, it's needed. It's required, and we'd really like some help. With the Clean Campus, we can make a little section. We've got other sections. We've got the Dutch section and the German section and the Japanese section. We can make a little section. That's our sort of free community thing. Or make it that we don't want to own it. If somebody else wants to run it, that's absolutely fine. But we can make it, if you want to keep it there or have somewhere to keep it, we can make a section where people debate and to a conclusion.
And there are other examples of groups of people who've worked on their translations, and people can be put in touch with other people. It's not that, it's not like it's never been done before.
And people know what the pitfalls are of trying to translate it. And of course, it's not just about translating it purely. This is a community interested in improving a community health. And so it's making sure that they're translated in such a way that they can just go out and do things, not translated in such a way that they become, oh, you've got to ask it like this, slow your tone down and put this syntax in it. That's not what we're doing here. We're making them into little nuggets, little seeds that go out and improve conversations all around the Arabic world.
Like that?
Yes. Just little.
I'm about to turn that into a business card. I haven't got around to it yet, but it's the kind of thing that people can just use and just crack on.
Yes.
They don't need that.
Yeah, and just a couple in your hand, clean in your pocket. Absolutely.
And we're at the end of our time. Is there anything else that needs to be said about this project?
I think just that to avoid hubris, I found myself wanting to tell the person when I could see them speaking more in the group than the group was, wanting to tell them, correct them, that it's really easy to become unclean. It's really easy to stop trusting people to be able to make their own decision. And that decision between when are you training and when are you facilitating is a tricky one. So I think avoid hubris and remember that even when you are an expert, you're not really the expert on what other people need next.